Yay, we're live. TIA for your for your entertainment while I do boring stuff. Oh, you are so sweet. Well, we're live. If anyone is here or wants to be here, we're doing live chart readings. And we're talking about Venus opposing Saturn, which is happening right now and over the next few days. Venus opposite Saturn. Hello, Shaima. How are you? How are you, my sweet? I hope you are well. I feel like I look terrible today. Ugh. Oh, well, it's okay. Let me sign into the chat. You son of a gun. Okay. Open in browser. There we go. Awesome. Awesome, awesome. Let me just let people know I'm live. Live. Live, live, live. Live. Live, live, live. We're live. Good. I'm glad you're good. So, I just let everyone know. So right now, Venus is at 13 degrees Virgo and Saturn is at 17 degrees Pisces. Thank you, Shaima. I appreciate it. I just feel like I look gross, you know? Anyway, it's all good. It doesn't matter. It's fine. But you see, Venus is going to be opposing Saturn over the next few days. What am I going to say? Like the next, I guess next week or so, for the next week or so. And it's really interesting because we see sort of a typical pattern with Venus opposite Saturn. Saturn. We see a pattern with Venus opposite Saturn. Yes, I'm a poet, and I know it. A lovely lyricist, right? But we do see some interesting patterns, right? You have a natal VIV. See, when I first see VIV, I think of like something in vagina. But you mean Venus and Virgo, obviously. So, but my first thought is something dirty, of course. Because that's my first thought about everything. But the really interesting pattern that I've noticed with Venus opposite Saturn is a couple of things. Number one, Venus is women, right? And feminine things. She's also art and aesthetic. Yes. She's our sense of relationship, like our whole social nature, not just romantically, you see. So, and what's Saturn? Saturn is boundaries, restrictions, right? Saturn is delays. Saturn is also old things, right? Old things and the things of the past. Yes? So there's a couple of patterns, right? Number one, restraint from Saturn with women, Venus, right? It's quite interesting. So we see women being restrained in some way or arrested or whatever. And one of the cool events, well, not cool, but one of the events that I found that correlated with this was the last time this happened, right? And when was the last time we had Venus opposite Saturn? Well, it was last year. It was October of last year. And one of the restraints of women I found was Greta Thunberg. I think I'm saying that correctly. That's how they say it on Democracy Now, right? It looks like Thunberg, right? She's Swedish. She's a climate activist, but I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Thunberg, right? Anyway, she was arrested for climate protests around the same time, I want to go through some of these events because Really interesting. But the more prevalent one that I noticed was, oh my gosh, I lost all my fucking windows here. I lost all my fucking windows here. On this day, on this day, you will play in a world of pure imagination. Or the fuck? What is this? August. Okay, September. I'm so sorry. I had all this open, and the reason I was late coming on here, was because there was no fucking sound. I had to restart my stupid computer. Cause shit just doesn't fucking work, apparently. I need shit to just fucking work for me. You know? I need shit just to work for me. I don't have time to be my own IT person. This is bullshit. This is bullshit. Anyway. If you're just joining me, welcome to the stream. We're talking about Venus opposite Saturn. Please like the stream and subscribe to my channel, because I'm trying to make it to 5,000 subscribers and I'm at 2,500. So I need help, please. And share all this shit with your friends, because I'm the best. Also remember, I do the best readings. It's science, right? You can book through my website, saturngirl.org. So please, you know. But in terms of Saturn opposite Venus, the other consistent thing we see is what? Saturn is old things, right? And Venus is aesthetic, yeah, and art and beauty. And women. So we see a revival of feminine things, of artistic things. You know, it could be Lighthouse Dreamer says, "What up, sister? What up, homie? How are you doing?" We're talking about Venus opposite Saturn. But please, if anyone wants to have their chart looked at in this context, right, of Venus and Saturn, and we can look at what Venus and Saturn mean in your chart, right? Because there are consistent themes with Venus, right, as I just spoke about. Our social nature, our relationships, our art, our aesthetic, right? What we find attractive. And then Saturn is delays, right? Old things, yes. Restrictions and boundaries, yes. Saturn, I call Saturn a she. I think of Venus sort of as my mama, and I think of Saturn as my grandmama, right? So the other interesting thing that we see pretty consistently, right, is a revival of female things, a revival of art or whatever. Right, so last time we had this, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, right, the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the former Supreme Court Justice of the United States, was honored in a commemorative stamp, right? Stamps are sort of art and all these sorts of things. Plus, Ruth Bader Ginsburg was what? A woman. And she was known for championing women's causes, right? And she was revived, right? On a stamp. You know, it's like Alf. Alf Pogs. You remember Alf? Well, he's back, but in Pog form. You see? So anyway, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she was sort of revived, right? What else happened that was quite interesting with this whole sort of thing? I mean, that was just one example. Another example from the time before that. Let's go back. Let's go back further in time. Let's go back further in time. So the time before that was August into September of 2022. And that's when the TV series Lord of the Rings of Power, right? It was a reboot of Lord of the Rings that premiered on Amazon Prime, right? So once again, the revival of artistic things, yes. And then going back into August, at the very, very end of August of 2022. Oops, went too far. I went too far. We see Nicki Minaj, right? With her song Super Freaky Girl. It's more feminine stuff. But then before that, it was July of 2021. And that was when Prince William of the UK and Prince Harry, right? The two brothers and sons of the late Princess Diana of Wales, they actually unveiled a statue of their mother Diana, right? On what would have been her 60th birthday. So you see, God, she still would have been gorgeous, wouldn't she? You know, she was always gorgeous. But anyway, you see the resurgence of these feminine icons and these feminine sorts of things. Lighthouse Dreamer, thank you. Thank you, sweetheart, for donating. We'll get right to your chart, sweetheart. We'll get right to your chart. And we'll look at what Saturn and Venus mean for you and do an example here. But thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your support. I really appreciate your support. I'm going to send a heart. I'm sending hearts. Moons, clovers, hearts, horseshoes. It's Lucky Charms. They're always after me, Lucky Charms. Moons, clovers, horseshoes. That's a terrible accent, but you know, it's funny to me. That's what I care about. I'm just trying to make myself laugh. So Lighthouse, if I remember correctly, your name is Francesca. Your name is Francesca, I think. Let me double check. Let me double check your stuff. November the 25th, 1969, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. 1:32 a.m. Oh, we talked about your chart in terms of sect last time, right? It was very early in the morning. 1:32 a.m. So yes, we expect the sun around the 4th house. That makes perfect sense. Now, where's your Venus? And where's your Saturn? Right? Saturn in the 9th house. Venus in the 3rd house. You know, it's a very wide orb, but they're opposite each other by sign. And in ancient astrology, which is what I primarily practice, aspects by sign were not only legit, but, you know, they were sort of... they were appreciated as integral in certain timing techniques, like when I talk about zodiacal releasing or things like that, or even dignity, you know, which indicates the power of a planet. Thank you, Shaima. I'm definitely going to look at yours, of course, darling. Is everyone informed? Is everyone informed? I just want to make sure. You know, I hate when things, you know, because people always tell me later, oh, I didn't know about your live. I'm like, I tried to advertise it as best I could. I really did. And I really prefer doing live streams over making video essays because I feel way more natural, you know? Oh, and for members here, are there any members here? No, there's no members yet. But I'm going to try and arrange a members only live stream, except I'm not going to be able to share my screen. I haven't figured that shit out yet through OBS, you know? Where did everyone go? I had 7 people and they all fucking disappeared. Anyway, good, Shaima, you received a notification. But anyway, right, we're talking about Saturn and Venus. In terms of number 1, our social nature, what it means for us. And Saturn sort of as, you know, our restrictive nature. How do you become a member, Shaima? There should be a membership join button down below. Next to, you might have to scroll to the right to see it. Sherry Berry, I would like to thank you for your incredible readings and insight. Thank you for the wonderful, wonderful accolades. I appreciate that. That's so sweet of you. So we were talking about Saturn sort of as, right, the restrictive nature, right? The past, you know, and sometimes even sort of the rebellious nature, you see, whereas Venus is more of the social nature. And so there's a couple of interesting things here. And these planets will mean specific things in your chart based on the houses they rule, you see? So it's quite important. So on the one hand, we would look at Venus and Scorpio and say, oh gosh, Venus isn't happy there, right? Because she rules Taurus. So when we see Venus in the opposite sign, think about what Venus does in Taurus. She has a natural affinity for beauty. She has a natural sense of aesthetic. In terms of her social, Lighthouse Dreamer, Saturn ruining your chart. No one is ruining your chart. No one, and I know you're half kidding and being tongue in cheek. But I also want to make sure people know that, not to look at their chart in terms of like, oh my God, it's ruined. Oh my God, this is that and that is this, right? We all have our cross to bear, don't we? We all have our difficult things that we face in life. It's all relative too, based on our experiences, our capacity to handle difficult experiences. What's difficult for you or what's difficult for me may not be so difficult for you. Like when I break a nail, I fall to pieces, Meanwhile, you might be super stoic, right? So anyway, no, nothing in your chart is ruined, you see? Oh, thank you, Sherry. I really appreciate your vote of confidence. But when I see Venus in Scorpio, right, she's not as socially adept as she is in Taurus. In Taurus, she's a little, she feels pretty. She feels a little confident. Typically, people come to her, right? She gets suitors, right? She gets people courting her or who are interested. Meanwhile, Venus in Scorpio is socially awkward as fuck, right? Because Venus is our social nature. Therefore, Venus in Scorpio has a very difficult time breaking the ice, even though it might feel cold as fuck, But yes, it's got a difficult time breaking the ice because it feels socially awkward. It's hard to just walk up to people and say hi. Venus in Taurus, I've had like 3 Venus and Taurus partners, and every one of them pursued me. Like, hey, baby, And I'm like, hi. Meanwhile, Venus in Scorpio, you got to pull it out of them. It can be very hot. Like if their Venus is trying my Cancer Venus, it could be super hot. Like your Venus is trying my Venus. I bet we'd have a fun time. I bet we'd have a fun time. But no, nothing's ruining your chart. Then you look at Saturn, right? Wherever Saturn is in our charts, that's where we face what? Setbacks, delays, oppositions, struggles, persistent struggles, right? And you have Saturn in the 9th house like me. Therefore, Saturn in the 9th house represents struggles, delays, and oppositions with religion, spirituality, right? Deeper meaning, philosophy, politics, religion, all these sorts of things. And you can see probably in your own life how that manifests. We often experience pain from religion growing up. Now with your specific chart, Venus rules what? Venus rules the 9th house, as we talked about, and your 2nd house. So we would look to the dignity, also known as the happiness or the power that Venus has to express, as indicative of how well that house does, or your subjective experience of that house. So, first of all, Venus being opposite Saturn by sign is still very awkward, right? Very socially awkward, can be shy, and be a bit isolated, right? I always make a joke that, the reason why Scorpio Venus is staring at you like that, all creepy, is because saying hi is too terrifying for them. Yes, cat, I can hear you. You are so sweet. My cat wants to get my dress full of cat hair. So anyway, with Venus ruling the 2nd house and the 9th house and being unhappy in Scorpio, it indicates a difficult financial situation, even though we might find Jupiter in the 2nd house. somewhere along the lines, either money was easy come, easy go, right? Or abundance felt tainted in some way. Yeah. Maybe there wasn't enough money to go around. Or maybe you always had to, as soon as it came in, you have to spend it right away. You know? Now, and ruling the ninth house again represents a difficult time with religion, perhaps. And I would also imagine that if you have any siblings, one of them might be pretty religious, and maybe there's some difficulty with siblings. I imagine you have a sister, right? Anyway, you might not get along with your siblings if you do have any. So, now the other thing is what house is Saturn rules, right? Saturn rules the fifth and the sixth house. So, if you do have children, one way to read that was maybe you have children who are involved in, the legal profession, in spirituality or philosophy, or sometimes, traveling in some way, or foreign cultures in some way. Children being involved also in, I already said the legal, politics and stuff like that, you see. Or academia. That's what I was looking for. Academia, working at universities and colleges and that sort of thing. But also, it's the sixth house ruler, you see. No kids. Okay, no kids. It's also the sixth house ruler. So I wonder if you do anything in your private life that has to do, like if you have a small business with spiritual stuff in some way, right? If you have a small business with spiritual stuff in some way, you're probably interested in tarot and astrology. I mean, you're here, obviously. But the sixth house ruler in the 10th, you see? And the sixth house is what? It's injuries, enemies, illnesses. But it's also the daily grind. Yeah? It's also small animals and pets and all that sort of thing. And I don't think any of your pets are religious leaders, So, but that's one way to read the house rulers. That's one way to read the house rulers. House rulers. We'll move on to the next person. Sherry Berry. My San Diego lover back in the 1980s has Scorpio Saturn conjunct Venus. Do not know house placement. He was married but pursued a relationship with me. He is still married. Yeah, that's pretty wild. It's not really a healthy Venus conjunct Saturn situation. Yes, tarot, astrology, and psychic. No pets, they die. I don't mean to laugh. I'm just, Mars in the sixth house. I bet you have a good work ethic, though. When I see Mars in the sixth house, I think of struggles with employees, right? If you were ever a manager. I imagine struggles with coworkers, conflicts with coworkers. And then once again, difficulties with animals like that. I mean, you probably love animals, but then the difficulty comes from them passing away. It never gets any easier. My parents used to breed dogs, and, I went through 6 of them dying before I was 30, So that was rough. That was rough. So that's Venus and Saturn. Now, where are they going to be in your chart? Right? Venus is in Virgo, right? In your first house. And Saturn is in your 7th house. So you can see how those houses are lit up right now. Lighthouse dreamer, right? Saturn is in your 7th house, which strains relationships or deepens commitment. And we've already found out that you're alone and that you don't want to put yourself out there, if I remember correctly from a previous thing. But if there was a time to put yourself out there, oh, Bexy, you're here. You're here. Great Danes. My parents used to breed Great Danes, Bexy. They used to breed Great Danes. Not bad Danes, but Great Danes. Not good Danes, but Great Danes. You see? And Shima. We have to look at Shima's Venus and everything, too. We have to look at Shima's Venus. See, and what does this mean for you in particular? And not just you, Francesca, but in general for people. I mean, Venus opposite Saturn in individual lives, right? It's a time when our social nature feels sort of suppressed, right? It's a time where we feel a bit, our social battery has been worn down. Yes. We might feel more shy or reserved. We may find we have more of a difficulty communicating with other people or opening up to people. If you're typically an extrovert like me, it's going to be a pain in the ass, right? Because usually you're all, oh, jovial and bubbly, right? And I notice I've been kind of, and Bexy, you probably noticed I've been sort of morose and melancholy and just feeling like, ugh, you know? And physically gross too, you know, just like low energy and everything. So this isn't the time to go out and push yourself. Like if you notice your social battery, like if you're, Bexy and I are going to a mixer tonight, aren't we? You know? And I very rarely get to go out to these things because I typically have my daughter. But, you know, we're going to go and play it by ear. If our social batteries aren't up, we're going to bounce. But we're going to give it a try, you know? So the key is here, don't push yourself into situations, especially if you don't feel comfortable. If you'd rather not do something, take the opportunity to sit it out, you know? Right? So anyway, but for you, Francesca, this definitely is sort of a time to sort of get out and put yourself in social situations because Venus is going through your first house and is pretty close to your ascendant very soon here. So, so this is sort of indicative of feeling good about yourself, of feeling pretty, of needing to doll yourself up a little bit. Do something new with your hair. Try some new makeup palettes. I mean, I wear the same fucking makeup every day. The same palette. But, you know, I like it. But for you, try something new. You know? And, once again, you know, take a risk. I'm saying this just for you because Venus is in your first house. Excuse me. You know, take a little risk. Take a little risk. Take a little risk with me. Right? The low rider goes a little slower, right? I don't want you're going to feel like you're moving a bit slower, but you need to have fun. The other thing that Saturn does opposite Venus is make it very hard to have fun because Venus is fun. Venus is pleasure and all that. But I'm still encouraging you to go do that stuff because Venus in your first house, that's when I often meet partners too, for good or for ill. When Venus is in my first or seventh house. Because typically we feel pretty and we have this little boost of confidence. I feel pretty. Oh, so pretty. I feel pretty and witty and gay. Right? That was Stephen Sondheim, if I'm not mistaken. Your mom is sick. I'm so sorry, baby. Well, we look for things, you know, aspecting the moon and stuff. And right now, Saturn is like exactly square your moon, right? Saturn is exactly square your moon right now. Exactly. So, yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to be glib. That really is terrible, sweetheart. But it's, oh my God, and Mars is exactly conjunct your moon right now, too. And Mars is illness. So, I didn't realize we have an exact square between Saturn and Mars today. Why didn't I know this was happening? I think I did. Am I stupid? No. They're exact today. And both these motherfuckers are aspecting your moon, which is your mother, typically. The moon is the mother. The mother. My dad used to say to me, Frankie, mother is half a word, right? And he thought he was being funny, but, you know, he means motherfucker, right? So you have to put your social life on hold. Yeah, I mean, this is something particular to your chart. We were talking about Venus and Saturn in general, but Venus is pardon me, Mars is exactly conjunct your moon, which is your mother. Like by 3 fucking minutes. Jesus Christ. And Saturn is square your moon as well by just a matter of minutes. So this is very rough. It's very characteristic of a long-term sort of illness situation with your mother. But it should start to improve. Gosh. Oh my gosh. It's going to take a while to improve. I'm not going to lie. It's going to take a while to improve. Saturn's retrograde right now for a while. And Saturn goes direct in November. Is it November or late October? Yeah, November. Saturn will be retrograde on election day. Fun. So anyway, oh my gosh. So I would expect things to be difficult with your mother. Goodness gracious. Because Saturn's going to come back for a hit. Things are going to be difficult with your mother, I imagine, until maybe March of next year. Maybe March of next year. Goodness gracious. And in October, you're going to have that. In October, you're going to have that solar eclipse in your second house. Right? So maybe you've had to pay a good amount of money or contribute financially to this situation with your mother, right? Because you're going to have big beginnings and endings when it comes to your finances and perhaps your business if you have one. Meanwhile, the lunar eclipse, coming up in September here, the moon's going to be in your first house. The moon's going to be in your 7th house, right? Sort of indicating there needs to be an end to this whole sense of solitude thing. So really, hopefully, the subsequent 6 months from September, I hope you do, I don't know, I hope you take advantage of the romantic sort of qualities lingering in the air for you, sweetheart. Anyway, you see, when I see Saturn going through the 7th house, I would expect you to meet someone. I'm sure we've looked at your zodiacal releasing before. And that would tell us a lot more, But we're not going to do that right now because we're going to look at Shaima. Shaima. We got barely anyone here. We have barely anyone here. That's really sad. It makes me sad. It makes me sad. Makes my Libra moon sad. I'm like, don't people like me? Don't people like me? Excuse me. Oh, Sherry Berry. We have to get to Sherry Berry too, I think. Oh, Bexy. Bexy's a member too. Bexy's a member too. We should get to Bexy's chart. My dear Bexy. Where the fuck is Shaima? Shaima? Where's Shaima? Could you please tell me about my zodiacal releasing? Sherry? Yes? Yes, I can. Let's look at Shaima really quick. And Shaima's Venus and Saturn. So Shaima has a Virgo Venus, right? And that's Venus in fall. Because Venus, right, is exalted in Pisces. So Virgo Venus, right? I mean, both Pisces and Virgo Venus are very submissive types, typically. The difference is that Pisces Venus is less of the, what's the word? Pisces Venus is more used to healthy, submissive type things. It can be like the trad wife, or it can be, people who just like to be wined and dined and taken care of, all that sort of thing. Whereas it's more difficult with Virgo Venus because, number one, it's very awkward, right? And number two, it gets like excessively submissive sometimes. Well, like to the point of putting itself in abusive situations, Whereas Venus and Pisces, doesn't do that so much. See, Venus in Pisces is very naturally trusting and naive, right? And that typically works out in their favor, right? They like being more trusting. They would rather trust people because the alternative is sort of living like in constant fear, which is sort of what Venus in Virgo does, right? It's hard for them to trust people. It's very easy for them to have their trust, betrayed. I've dated lots of Virgo Venuses, and most of them were Leos, right? But if you betray their trust, even in a little way, they're going to take it very seriously. For example, I was late to one of my girlfriend's, things. She had a Virgo Venus at the time. Or my girlfriend at the time had a Virgo Venus. And believe me, I didn't get sex that night. Right? And it took me a while to earn back that trust. But by that time, I was already over it. So, I was over it, unfortunately. Great sex. It's just, I was very mercurial. I was just very mercurial. I think she was the first person I dated after my separation. So, but you see how this is sort of, I make fun of Venus and Virgo being submissive and people pleasing. It's like they're submissive to their detriment, right? Whereas Pisces Venus is like, they enjoy being, they enjoy someone sort of taking care of them. They have a greater sense of beauty and aesthetic. Meanwhile, I think of Venus and Virgo sort of like Velma from Scooby-Doo, Velma from Scooby-Doo. Oh, and I have to leave right after 2 hours today. So we have another hour and 20 minutes. But I have to leave right away because my temporary crown has popped off 3 times now. So, and it finally broke last night. So anyway, that's a difficulty with Venus. And then Saturn, right? And then Venus being in the 4th house also. It often gives us a love of history. Sometimes we might be close to our father or the country of our birth or, our religious tradition or our family traditions or our genealogy in some way. We may get luck in some way from our family history or our bloodline or our father, whatever, Meanwhile, Saturn is the delays and the restrictions, right? Saturn isn't happy in Cancer, right? So we have a difficult Venus and a difficult Saturn. Saturn being in the 2nd house often means delays when it comes to what? Our financial resources, our financial security, right? And so a lot of times we'll see this correlate with growing up poor, with a sense of lack, and also a sense of frugality and needing to save and all that sort of thing. Now, Venus rules what? The 12th house and the 5th house. So you see, there may have been, if Shaima has children, there may have been difficulty, right? Around giving birth and that sort of thing. Yes. There may have been a home birth, right? But Venus isn't happy, so that's where the difficulties and that sort of thing come from. You see? The children might have to deal with their own sort of troubles, you see? I mean, they always do. But when Venus is unhappy, there's usually either a difficulty around childbirth or around, the child's experience growing up. Like, they might have neurodivergence, right? They may get bullied. They might be shy. They might be socially awkward. That sort of thing. Excuse me. The other thing that could have happened too is, a father could have had to leave, right? Because Venus rules the 12th house of isolation and all that sort of stuff. Dad may have had substance problems or mental problems, or I don't know, right? Or had to be away or something like that. But Venus in the fourth house typically means you were close to your dad. Now, Saturn, on the other hand, rules the eighth and the ninth house. Yeah, and then isn't very happy in the second. You know, so on the one hand, you see Jupiter in the ninth house is like, oh, you're a very spiritual person. And this may happen later in life because Jupiter's retrograde. But then Saturn ruling the ninth house, very unhappy, indicates that religion was not a good thing for you growing up. It wasn't happy. It wasn't comfortable. You know, it felt restrictive. It felt like it hemmed you in, probably. You have 3 teenagers. Awesome. Awesome. Congratulations. I mean, teenagers can be a pain in the butt, though. You know, I'm sure you know that. And then Saturn also rules the 8th house, where you have your north node. You know, and Saturn is more or less opposite the north node. So Saturn's sort of on the south node, which indicates that difficulty with resources and money and all that. You know, especially being something you encounter earlier in life, right? And then it should ease up as you know you get into your early 40s. Because the north node sort of indicates that you get either income that isn't stuff that you work for, right? It could be passive income from like your parents or generational stuff, I don't know. Could also be having to work with loss, you know? And it can signal that loss and fear have been a big part of your life and something that you're sort of being pushed to face and overcome. Am I doomed with these unhappy placements? No one is doomed. You can always work on stuff. You know, the chart is a map of what you're not. And becoming aware of these blind spots brings them into the light, right? Everyone's like, what do you mean by bringing the darkness into the light and all that? Well, Carl Jung used this phrase called shadow work, right? What's a shadow do? It hides something. Yes? The shadow is what you're unconscious of. So you can look at your chart sort of like a map of your patterns, right? But they exist in the shadow where you don't typically see them, right? And Carl Jung also said that which remains unconscious manifests outside as fate, right? We keep repeating patterns when we're not aware of them, aren't we? Or don't we? And then on the other hand, we lift them into the light through the work of observation. What's the light here? It's the light of attention. By learning to put our attention, to focus and fix our attention on the sensation of being us, of being you, whatever it feels like to be you, when you say me, to me, this is the primary remediation for any of this stuff, to make the unconscious conscious. And I disagree emphatically with Carl Jung on many things. I think he was a terrible asshole. But these things that he did say are representative of the underpinning philosophy behind ancient astrology, right? In ancient times, remediation consisted of praying at the shrines of gods and goddesses. Whereas now we have therapy, right? And we have self-work. And the self-work we have to do, right, is primarily the work of self-observation, self-sensing, what we might call self-remembering. So Shaima, you're not doomed, but you are. You're doomed to repeat patterns as long as you're unconscious of them. You see? Now there's some, you have a certain circumference, right? That might be a little bit fluid, like you can push the circumference of your life a little bit, but you're still going to have these these same challenges sort of pop up here and there, and they present you with an opportunity to work past them and to consciously, right, to consciously work past them. And in becoming aware of them consciously, you get distance between yourself and those painful things. And you notice that they fall away, right? Because you've become less swayed by them, right? This is sort of the Stoic philosophy, if you will. So anyway, No, you're not doomed. You're not doomed. But you have more work to do when it comes to your sense of uh, uh, financial stability and material stability. And bit by bit, you're learning to let go of all that, right? I'm thinking I'm blocked from chat. I see you, Sherry. I see you. I see you, Sherry. And no one has blocked you. So anyway, we should get to Sherry's chart. We should get to Sherry's chart. Sherry wanted to see Zodiacal releasing. But Shaima, there's a certain shyness for Shaima indicated, right? And Shaima might be a little bit of a people pleaser with that Venus and Virgo, right? And so a big thing for Shaima, is to still maintain her individuality, her sense of individuality and confidence in a relationship. Because Virgo Venus wants to collapse into a relationship because of lacking that sense of security, that sense of inner security. So that's not something that comes natural to you probably. And it indicates that it's a blind spot that you need to work on, right? And the only way to work on that sense of insecurity is by accomplishing things, by taking risks, right? And not stupid risks, but I mean like putting yourself out there unless you have a partner, unless you have a partner. But even still, in social circumstances, even with friends, you want to be careful not to continuously, you don't want to be apologizing for nothing. Like, see, these are the kinds of people who try to smooth over social conflicts or uncomfortable situations by apologizing when they didn't even do anything wrong, So make sure you don't do that. And if you do, stop it. Don't apologize for other people's shitty behavior. Now let's look at Sherry. Sherry baby. Sherry baby. Oh. Sherry baby. Thank you, Sherry. That's very kind to say to Shaima. Yeah, we love Shaima. And I don't mean to be glib. I don't mean to be glib about your situation, Shaima. I'm just being very matter of fact. I'm being very matter of fact. Sherry. Sherry baby. So we're going to look at Sherry's Zodiacal releasing. But first we have to look at her chart to see how that would go. We can see Sherry's part of fortune, right, is in the 6th house in Sagittarius, which means her peak periods will all be on the fixed cross, right? The angular signs and houses from Sagittarius. Now we also have to see if Sherry has a night chart or a day chart, and we can see what the sun below the horizon. So we know that Sherry has a night chart. So Venus is going to be her best planet. Venus is in Leo, right? Unfortunately opposite Saturn. And we know Saturn is going to be her worst planet. So these fixed signs will always be in relationship, right, to her best and worst planets. So it's just like The Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. You're welcome, Shaima. Thank you for the donation. Thank you for the donation. And you're a people pleaser, Sherry Berry? Yeah, you got a moon in Pisces. It's like the endless people pleaser thing. It's because it's got a natural sense of empathy. It relates to the pain and moods and suffering of others, so to speak, right? And that makes it very uncomfortable. So it starts trying to do things, to alleviate other people's discomfort, which really doesn't help. It doesn't help at all. People take advantage of it and you just feel resentful. So for Pisces moons, you got to realize when to pull back, and remove yourself from a situation and perhaps get some alone time rather than trying to fix things and fix people, because you won't. So anyway, so in terms of zodiacal releasing, we see that Leo would probably be the best of times and Aquarius would be the worst of times. But then they would also be opposite each other. So once again, Beck says she's also a people pleaser. Well, and you have a Virgo moon, baby. Remember, you have a Virgo moon, baby girl. Which is also a terrible people pleaser and also very submissive. Very submissive. Oh, excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me. God. Am I already getting my caffeine crash? But let's go look at zodiacal releasing. Venus in Leo, though, can be quite possessive. It can be a very possessive type thing. It's also very loyal. It just gets jealous. Just gets jealous. And in the second house, it needs material security. It likes nice things. Anyway, Saturn in the 8th house, is about learning about laws. Or learning to let go through losing things. Learning detachment, essentially. So let's open up zodiacal releasing. Zodiacal releasing. And we've got Sherry baby, Sherry baby. I can't help it. August 7th. Yes, mate. 1963. That's around the time Kennedy was assassinated. That was November 22nd, 1963. 4:22 a.m. Santa Ana. Santa Ana. Oh my God, there's so many Santa Anas. There we go. So, we have a lot of spirit and a lot of love. Is there anything you want to know specifically about? Is there something you wanted to know specifically about, Sherry? Sherry Berry? Anyway, we'll look really quick. Let me see. Properties. Okay. Finances. Well, for your finances, we would look at movements of the sun, which rules your second house. And things in the second house. So number one, Mercury's going back into your second house. So you're having to revisit some financial things that you didn't take care of properly, right? Let me move this away for a second, and then we'll go back to it. So you see how Mercury is going retrograde today, or actually just went retrograde yesterday back into Leo, into your second house. So there's a tension that needs to happen on your finances, right? Right away. So you're going to have to revisit some. I need to pay off a huge debt fast. Okay, right? Well, the sun is still in Leo for right now too. You know, um, your attention is being redirected onto your finances. Gemini is your 12th house. So there's no wonder you have to pay debt. But you see, there's a loss of money, right? There's a loss of money going on. And that may be indicated by the debt. I'm not sure, you know. But so this is important. Now remember, Mercury's going to go direct on August 28th. Is that right? August 28th? Yeah. Mercury's going to go direct on August 28th, I'm pretty sure. And so you're going to get more news after that time. Right now, things are going to be very unclear. And you might need a plan or something how to approach, right, this debt that you have to repay. And so you might be working out a payment plan or a restructuring. But it might not really be solidly in place until later this month. So I know for me, when it comes to medical debt, I usually have to set up payment plans. Or, for my taxes, I have to be on payment plans for my taxes because I typically owe a bunch of money. Because this country hates small business people but loves big corporations, I have to pay a bunch of taxes. Meanwhile, Amazon gets a fucking tax rebate, right? So, believe me, I'm not bragging about paying taxes. God damn, moon opposite Pluto. You poor baby. Sherry had a rough time with her mom. Did you have mama trauma, Sherry? Mama trauma? Do you have volatile emotions? Are you on the bipolar coaster? My love is like a bipolar coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride. I mean, you wanna ride. Go ahead and ride me, Ride my bipolar coaster. You love it, Bexy, don't you? So yeah, your mind is on your money and your money's on your mind. Right? This has to do with financial shit. Now let's look at your part of fortune here. I'm going to open this up a little bit. Sorry, your part of spirit, which isn't money necessarily. It's like recognition, right? Accolades, like your career, stuff like that. But your career can tell you about your income, can it? Let's see here. Now, the mutable cross, does the mutable cross have anything good or bad? Not really. Not really. So you have an interesting configuration, right? Your best planet is opposite your worst planet. And your second best planet is opposite your second worst planet. So you see, it's like this harm reduction thing going on. Which is great because things never get insurmountable. Like, you have surmountable difficulties. The thing that sucks is the good times would always be sort of, infected. I guess, infected with some discomfort in some way or a big challenge in some way. So right now, look at this. You're in a Leo period that started in February. Now for you, Leo contains Venus, which is wonderful, but it's also opposite Saturn, which is very difficult. So you see, this isn't a fun time necessarily, but you're able to get through it because Venus is opposite Saturn, right? Now you could say, well, gee, all the good income stuff that Saturn is doing, or that Venus is doing, is being taken away by Saturn. So you can kind of see the quality of what's going on. It's like whatever luck you have gets taken right away, right? So whatever extra income you get goes right into this debt or whatever the fuck, And you're in a Sagittarius level 3 period, you see here. What's the quality of Sagittarius for you? Well, Sagittarius, it's ruled by Jupiter, but you don't have any malefics or benefics aspecting either which way. So you see there's a heightened period of activity going on, right? And it's the house of fortune. It's the house that your part of fortune is in. So this is a big deal. It's increased activity, but it's not necessarily good or bad. It's just a lot going on. But here, with it being a Sagittarius level 3 period, oh, oops, I'm sorry. With it being a level 2 Leo period, rather, there's this give and take between the good and the bad, unfortunately. Now, September of next year, right, you're going to go into a peak period, a level 2, which is pretty significant. So hopefully you start to see some improvement in your financial situation as you get into 2025, right? But then before then, you're going to have this Aquarius level 3 period that starts at the end of October. And you might notice that's following the solar eclipse, which is going to happen in Libra. But these Aquarius periods for you are difficult because it's the Saturn time. And those will feel like periods of loss, right? But Venus is opposite, so there's luck in the loss somehow. So once again, this might be indicative of having a small modicum of financial luck, but then having to give it away right away. Like Red Hot Chili Peppers. Give it away, give it away, give it away now. Give it away, give it away, give it away now, right? Sorry. She was brilliant, wonderful lady who was a Pisces ascendant. I'm going to keep you streaming for the crocodile, but I have to go for now. Also, I haven't noticed it yet, to be honest. Okay, Bexy. Sherry baby. Sherry baby. Oops. There we go. Sherry, who was a brilliant, wonderful lady. Oh, your mother was horribly addicted to soma, as in the soma. I'm so sorry. So sorry. She was brilliant, wonderful lady who was a Pisces ascendant. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I'm so sorry. The moon. Yeah, I mean, that does make sense for moon opposite Pluto. Is anything else aspecting the moon? Moon opposite Pluto. Moon opposite Mercury. Excuse me. Oh. Neptune trying the moon. Neptune's intoxication. So that sort of makes sense. Oh, wow. We only have 3 fucking viewers. Should I start talking about Saturn again? Should I just start talking about Saturn again? Sherry baby. Excuse me. Now, the other thing about your finances, Sherry, we should look at your ruler of debt, which is Saturn. Right, and so it's sort of it because Saturn rules the 8th house and is in the 8th house. So it's quite interesting that this is sort of a general experience in your life of having, your modicum of success, like having to go to pay things off, right? Losing that sort of sense of success sometimes. Now, remember, Saturn in the 8th house, though, is all about letting go, right? So now it sounds easy for me to say, but in terms of your own life and fulfillment, letting go of expectations will be important, because maybe there's like an added fear or an added sort of concern around material stability or around having enough, and maybe you get a little too afraid or a little too worried about having enough. So taking very objective stock of your financial situation and your resources will be quite important, because maybe you don't need to be as freaked out as you are. I mean, it definitely sounds like you're anxious about it, which, maybe that's well-founded. Maybe that's very important. But we can only deal with things as, as we're able, as we're able. So sometimes you have to let something, and I'm saying that because Mercury is retrograde now in your second house. And that indicates delays. So you might need to sit tight while you're waiting to hear back from someone from your financial institution or from the company or from collections, right? About setting up payments. But you don't, it might be a delay, but also don't sit and wait. Like keep calling them because you don't want to get lost in the system, right? You don't want to get lost on the customer service call line, you know? So make sure you keep on calling, keep on contacting whoever this is. But there's some sort of, it's a past financial situation that's coming back up that you have to take care of, right? Once again, I typically think of arranging payments. I think of payment arrangements. Yeah. So hopefully that works out for you. I don't know a whole lot of specifics. I mean, I can look and see what, like Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo. So you have your 12th and your third house sort of lit up here. In terms of the third house, right? It could be money you owe on a car or method of transportation, right? Something like that. So anyway, that's quite interesting, isn't it? Now, what about Mars? What about Mars being square Saturn right now? Isn't that wild? Isn't that wild? It's Mars in Gemini in your 12th house and Saturn in your 9th house. We'll go back to the transit chart for today. So look at that. Jupiter and Mars are still conjunct, right? And Mars and Saturn are square. Now, the one thing that I noticed this time with Mars conjunct Jupiter was, because Mars is illness and Jupiter makes things bigger. And there have been a lot of COVID outbreaks lately. There's been a lot of people getting COVID. I got COVID for a week and it was terrible. But you see, we do see that happen with these Mars Jupiter conjunctions. I think the same thing happened at the beginning of the pandemic, right back in March of 2020. We had Mars conjunct Jupiter also. So you see the explosion of disease. Now, we also see violence, right? I think Mars was conjunct Jupiter. Was Mars no. But last time Mars was conjunct Jupiter, there were violent episodes, in Russia, and then mass shootings and stuff that happened. But see, now we don't even notice mass shootings in the United States anymore, do we? Because they're such a common occurrence. Ooh. Oh, my 8th ball. My 8th ball. I'm so lucky. I have never had COVID. Everyone else I know has had it at least once. Yeah, see, where's your Mars and stuff? Should find your shit. Sherry. Because you can see health stuff with the moon, the 6th house, and the 1st house ruler, right? Where the fuck did yours go? Oh, here you are. Wait, what was your birth info? Why does it look different? Waco, Texas. Who the fuck was that? Am I stupid? Am I stupid? Why do I have weird information for you? Sherry, Sherry, Sherry. Sherry, 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 how you do that trick. The one that makes me scream, she said. Can you just remind me about your birth info? Because I've got a couple different things in here. Where's the other Sherry? The fuck, yo? This shit's driving me insane. I hate dead air like this. That's one of the things that sucks about these fucking live streams, is going like between all these charts. I have to clear all this. I have to clear it all. I'm not stupid. Well, thank you. I'm just slow. August 7th, 1963. That's what I thought. That's what I thought. I had some other... Oh, here we go. See, I had some other Sherry in there. Anyway, let's see the condition of your first house ruler is the moon. So the moon will be, indicate a lot of health stuff for you. Now, the moon's opposite Pluto, right? So we talked about emotional volatility, right? Mom having substance issues. Neptune trying the moon. So you got to watch your own stuff too. I mean, you said you were psychic. That's probably the psychic thing. Oh, no, it was the last person that said they were psychic, I guess. But that's a pretty characteristic thing. Is Mars? Do we have Saturn an aspect to the ascendant? No. Anyone an aspect to the moon? No. See, you see? There's nothing bad really happening to your moon. You could say moon conjunct Chiron, but it has nothing to do with dignity. Sixth house ruler is Jupiter. And Jupiter's there at the top of the chart. You know? Anyway, so yeah, no big indicators of disease. Anything aspecting your ascendant? Jupiter square. It's not bad. It's not bad at all. So anyway, yeah, it's not surprising to me, is it? August 7th. Now, what about this whole Mars square Saturn thing? And conjunct Jupiter. You know, think about what Mars is. Mars is violence and action. Right? Mars is schism and conflict. Yeah? Mars is also disease, injuries, illnesses, and enemies. Right? So we see oppositions sort of, explode a bit. We see explosions. But we also see Saturn here stifling those things. Right? So deception. Right? Deception. And deception also happens with the Mercury retrograde thing. Right? Deception also happens with the Mercury retrograde thing. It might feel like action is stifled. Think of like implosions, right? Exploding inward. It's very uncomfortable because Mars wants to go outward and Saturn is like, it's almost like Mars pulls the pin on the grenade, and then Saturn's like, nope. And Mars is like, So stuff often does build up. I think what we'll see is sort of uncomfortable opposition and conflict, right? Where things are like bubbling up but not exploding. It's like we want an orgasm, but it's not happening. We're like just teetering at the edge. I think of this as like edging ourselves, right? We're sort of like edging. We're like, okay, not yet, not yet, not yet, not yet, almost, right? We're hanging out on the edge, Quantum function. I'm super late. I bet I missed a lot. I love my intuition and being able to help my friends. It comes and goes. I wish I could control it. The ganja helps. Sherry says I'm a psychic stoner. Seriously, I do have some great psychic ability. I'm emotionally addicted to smoking THC. I mean, I am too, you know. I am too. So, but I don't consider myself a psychic. So, but anyway, you see, Mars square Saturn is very frustrating because we want to explode and we can't yet, right? We're just holding that toy right on ourselves. And we're like, Or, you know, I've been in situations with dominance where they're like, I'll be like, can I come, please? And they're like, no. And I'll be like, okay. You know, it's sort of like that situation. I don't mean to be vulgar. But it can be terribly frustrating. And we often see it correlate with violence as well. You know, because things build up and then they explode. You know what is weird? If I get great news or a burden is suddenly removed, I can instantly have an orgasm. I mean, that's pretty interesting. And so I wonder if that's part of your Venus Saturn nonsense that was going on. You know, with the Venus opposite Saturn by sign, where like when you feel that sense of restriction, you can't let go, you know? But if you're worried and stressed out, you cannot get there at all. Yeah, I mean, for me, if I'm thinking too much about it, it gets really difficult, right? I've noticed I gotta just focus on the sensation, you know? Because I love having parts of myself touched and massaged and everything. So now I'm trying to like more just relax into the situation and be in the moment rather than focus on finishing. Although I'm addicted to orgasms, so it's quite difficult for me, you see? So anyway, but and Venus is about to be square Mars, right? So we're going to have this T-square here of Venus opposite Saturn, you know, with Mars and Jupiter making, you know, people call it a T-square, but it's a couple of sets of squares, you know? So here we go. Here we go, right? I think this indicates more I mean, you don't have to be psychic to to realize that there are conflicts around abortion and what reproductive rights in general, you know, and even trans rights. And, you know, that all falls under the auspices of Venus, right? And Saturn is also deception. Mercury retrograde is deception. What did we just have at the Olympics? We had this trans panic, didn't we? You know? So it was like femininity was under a microscope. Yeah? And being restrained and restricted. And the different expressions of femininity were being sat on by Saturn, right? And then we have this conflict that's being perpetrated by Mars and Jupiter here, sort of blowing these things up out of proportion. Yeah. And then Mercury retrograde brings a bunch of lies into the thing. You know, we had Donald Trump at a fucking rally after it already had been endlessly explained that Imani Khalif, who was, you know, the Algerian boxer, female boxer who won the gold, right? Trump was still up at a rally saying, oh, it was a man who won. This man, it was a man who won the gold, right? It was a man, right? Like he's fucking Austin Powers. It's a man, baby. No, she's a cis woman. She has a fucking uterus. It's not you, it's uterus. You know? It's uterus, not you. That was from The Simpsons. But you see how this is all very characteristic. And then we have a number of states, like Arizona and Florida, who have abortion rights on the ballot, right? Ballot initiatives to codify the whole thing in their state constitutions. So it's interesting, right? This push-pull going on. And a lot of deception around it. Oh, leave it up to the states. We've left it up to the states. As if that's a valid excuse. Half the states want to make it illegal. And want to make it illegal nationwide. So, I mean, shit. So you see how this stuff follows these historical patterns? And like on a lighter note, how we see how Venus opposite Saturn represents the restoration, right, of feminine things, right? Like Ruth Bader Ginsburg or Princess Diana, as well as the revival of art and aesthetic, right? Like Lord of the Rings, like Stephen Sondheim, right? I think it was a Sondheim play. Oh, we got to get to Wave Function, Ms. Colston, and Bexy. So Bexy, when you get back, I will look at your chart. I will look at your chart. So for those of you just joining us, please like the stream, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Now we have 4 members here. So I'm going to go ahead and do a members only live stream. A members only live stream on what day? It'll probably have to be Monday. Oh, I guess I could do one tomorrow. We can try and do a members only live stream tomorrow. And we'll do lessons on ancient astrology. And we would start off with the history and with sect. So, for those of you members here, we can go ahead and do a members only live stream tomorrow. It'll be at the same time, 1 p.m. Eastern. Okay. Happy Jupiter Day. Yes, happy Jupiter Day. So we'll go ahead and do it tomorrow. We'll do lessons. I just can't share my screen. So I'm just going to be talking. Okay. I'm going to be talking about the history of astrology because I haven't figured out how to share my screen, or sorry, I haven't figured out how to do live streams through, or members only live streams through Streamlabs, which is what I'm using here. I have to do it through YouTube itself. Yeah, which is fine, but I don't know how to share my screen. So I'll have to practice that. You might see a couple test streams tomorrow. So anyway, and it'll be recorded so members can go back and watch it later. So tomorrow we'll start with astrological history. Astrological history and, a beginning talk about sect, that is night and day, right? And the symbolism of these whole things. I hope I can figure out how to share my screen. I might have to pay for the full version of Streamlabs at some point. I think that's what it is. Anyway, so quantum function. I did try and watch a YouTube tutorial, and there was nothing. How do I share my screen? See, all of them say use Streamlabs. On YouTube, I don't know. I'll check it later. I have to check it later. I hate things. I hate stuff and things. Things and stuff can kiss my ass. Things and stuff. Stuff and things. Oops. So there's quantum functions chart. We were talking about Venus and Saturn, right? So Venus is the social nature on the one hand. Saturn is where we find restraint and restriction in our lives, right? Where we find long-term struggles. Yeah. So having Venus in Cancer, right? I have Venus in Cancer. We often say our friends are our family. You know, we develop these close bonds. We get very nostalgic too about people from our past or people in general. You know, every so often you might be like, oh, I miss my bestie or whatever. I'm going to text her. Like, I feel like I haven't talked to you in so long. I love you so much. You still mean so much to me, you know. Those are also Mercury retrograde. Thank you, quantum function. Amber was gifted. Isn't Amber already a member? But thank you, quantum function. I wonder why it went to Amber. Aren't you already a member, Amber? Anyway, so your social nature, you know, indicated by Cancer, right? And so a lot of this means that we like to, you know, we're the kind of people who save like old notes, you know, old cassette tapes, shit like that. You know, old photos, old pictures, and we reminisce about things, you know. Yeah, our friends are our family. Remember, what's his name? Vin Diesel, right? In Fast and Furious. My friends are my family, right? That's the kind of shit that I think of. You know, but Venus is also in the 5th house. So it indicates, like, you know, needing to have fun. I mean, your social nature, part of it is like having fun, going out, you know, joking with people. You know, you might be a little bit of a social butterfly, even though you get clingy and nostalgic and all that sort of stuff, right? Sometimes we wonder, are they mad at me? You know, I hope they're not mad at me. But it's very sweet. Cancer Venus is very sweet. Oh, Priestess Shakti, thank you. Thank you, Quantum Function. You are so sweet. You are so sweet. And then where's restriction? It's in the 7th house and in Virgo, right? So that typically means there's restriction around connecting with people. And so we see the delays in life around human connection and developing that social aspect with people. I mean, we often see this manifest as hyper independence because people feel like they can't trust others. And I'm sure we've talked about that with you, right? Now, in terms of the Saturn opposition with Venus, you know, Venus is in Virgo right now and Saturn is in Pisces. So it's like, it's opposite. So you have Saturn going through your 1st house, which is, it sort of deconstructs our sense of identity and we have to put it back together, right? Meanwhile, Venus is going through your 7th house. So this is quite interesting because hopefully Saturn has set you up, you know, to connect with people a bit more. Because when Venus goes through our 7th house, often we meet new partners or make new romantic connections. But it also can be just sort of connecting in general with people again. It means being comfortable enough to put ourselves out there, right? So hopefully you've been beaten down and deconstructed enough to the point to where you've got sort of a renewed sense of yourself, and it's time to take it on test drives in different social situations. Yes, also don't like asking for help at all. Yeah, so you're going to have to get over that because that aversion to asking for help, that sense of hyper independence comes from fear, doesn't it? It ultimately comes from a fear that other people will let you down. That you'll have to do everything yourself because you can't trust people. Right? So anyway, that's something we have to learn to get over. And Venus going through Virgo should indicate, you know, being faced with that to a certain extent. And then Mercury is going retrograde out of your 7th house, right? Which, you know, very briefly put your attention on relationships and is going back into the 6th house, right? So that means responsibilities that you didn't take care of or you let go. It means having to go back and clean up a mess that you didn't take care of, right? The 6th house is all the stuff that falls apart when you don't take care of it. Could have to do with your health. Could be doctor's offices, you know, doctor's appointments or, you know, medical test results. Could be something to do with your pets. Could be having to take them to the vet, or resolving a vet bill, or, any number of things like that. But more often it usually has to do with your own, your own work life, or responsibility you didn't take care of that you had committed to, right? And you have to watch out for making commitments around this time, because we flake out, and so do other people while Mercury's retrograde. You see? So anyway, and then remember, we've got Saturn here square Mars, right? Pretty explosive. With Jupiter in the whole mix. I am very open to relationships now, where before I didn't want anything to do with one. Yeah, and you see, that's really important, because I think it's going to bring you a greater sense of fulfillment, right? And when we stay away from relationships, oftentimes it's that sense of fear, right? But when you have Mars conjunct Jupiter here, it indicates, you know what? Like, relationships are still an important part of my life. When Mars is in the 7th house, it can indicate divorces and conflicts around relationships. But it also indicates like a heavy desire to have one. A heavy desire to have one. Sarah Uphell, I have some weird stuff with my chart for this full moon. Well, the full moon, it's going to be in a few days, so. But who is next? We had Ms. Colston. Is Bexy back? Is Bexy back? Is Bexy back? Because I'll look at you too. Do. I was just looking at the exact hour of the full moon. Where's the moon? So it's going to be around 1 p.m. or so on August 19th. So it's still a good 4 days away. Still a good 4 days away. Whenever I see the full moon, I'm like, yeah, that moon is getting filled up, right? Filling up that moon, right? She's getting filled up with sun juice. And then I'm like, when the moon starts waning again, I'm like, oh, look, Mommy Moon is dripping sun juice out of her craters, out of her craters. So here we go. We look at quantum function. And then we're going to look at Ms. Colston. Ms. Colston. Ms. Colston. We'll see if we have time for you, Sarah. I have to go to the dentist after this. I have to go to the dentist after this. Sherry. Where's Ms. Colston? I mean, what? Why can't I find Ms. Colston's chart? Oh, here we go. Not out of her craters. That moon is getting filled up by sun juice. It's like a lunar cream pie, right? It's like a moon pie. It's a moon pie. Yeah. It's a moon pie. It's a blue moon as well. Anyway, so Ms. Colston, Venus is the social nature. Saturn is the restrictive nature, right? And we see a very unhappy Saturn in Leo, right? So there's restriction around the financial around material resources in general, right? Whereas the social nature, Venus is in Aquarius, isn't she? Now, Venus in Aquarius, Venus isn't bad in Aquarius, but it makes her more Saturnian. What happens to Venus in a Saturnian sign? Well, Saturn is cold, right? Saturn is cold and dry. So imagine what you do with Venus when she gets a little cold and dry, right? She gets very aloof, you know. I don't like when Venus is dry. I want her wet. I want her sopping and dripping, you know. I want Venus to be wet and slimy and slippery. That's how I want my Venus. I love Venus in Aquarius, though, as Ms. Colston knows. It does have a tendency to be a bit more detached, to be a bit more cerebral and attracted to intelligent people, right? It can be a bit experimentalist when it comes to love and things like that, or relationships. Or sometimes it's really prudish, right? Once again, cold and dry. That's why I call it Elsa, you know? The Ice Queen. But I've been with lots, like 4, maybe 5 Aquarian Venuses. And they tend to fall in love with me, you know, because my ascendant is 1 degree Aquarius. And when you see Venus conjunct or trine someone's ascendant, it's oftentimes like love at first sight. Or even a certain, sextile to a certain degree. Like Bexy. I think her Venus is sextile my ascendant. You know, and you can see that. And you can see that. Excuse me. But see, then the house placement, Venus in the 8th house. You know, there's a sense of having to reconcile with people, right? Maybe there's a part of you that feels aseptic and it's very hard to connect with people. And so the 8th house, Venus in the 8th house is always learning to build bridges, right? Learning to build bridges. And Venus in the 8th house learns to let things go. We also get luck from other people, right? We get a certain amount of luck from other people. There's often an awareness of death and trauma. So when we see our social nature focused in the 8th house, we also see people who are sort of like confidants for others, who people confide in, people who share their trauma, right? Who share their trauma with others. Now you can see some of the quality of how this manifests with the, Venus rules the 11th house and the 4th house. So sometimes I'd wonder if the father died quite young, 4th house ruler is dad in the 8th house of death. Or I might wonder if a friend passed away. Now these would probably have happened before the age of 30. So either a friend passing away or father passing away. And maybe a sense of, I wanted to say pessimism, but no. Jupiter there is pretty optimistic. Anyway, Saturn, on the other hand, rules the 7th and 8th house and is unhappy in Leo. So that tells me, once again, difficult financial things, perhaps maybe struggling with debt. But I'd also expect there to have been difficult relationships. Maybe people who try and drain you of money, right? Or people you feel like you have to support, or people who aren't working or doing anything, So you have to watch out for those kinds of people. Anyway, let's move on. We did Ms. Colston. Let's do Sarah. Let's do Sarah. And then we got to do Bexy. Is Bexy here again? Bexy. You had a boyfriend pass away in 1994. I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry. Gosh. I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry. Yeah, that's a not happy Saturn. And the Saturn-Mars thing, too. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. Goodness gracious. current situation. I don't, what about your current situation, baby? I have to move on to Sarah, and then I have to go to the dentist because my temporary crown broke in half. I mean, we've talked about Saturn. Well, Venus, is going through your third house, which I oftentimes think of, siblings reconciling with a sister or brother or something like that. But also being quite diplomatic. Educational projects, training, stuff like that. Venus opposite Saturn for you, though. I mean, you're having a deconstruction in what you believe. Which is quite interesting because with Venus in the third house right now, communicating your new realizations might be quite important for you. Maybe you need to write some stuff down. Write down your thoughts and revelations or even poetry about your recent experiences. So anyway, let's go back to Sarah. Sarah, friend. That's from the Labyrinth. Turn back, Sarah. Sarah, just bow down and worship me, and I will be your slave. The Labyrinth? The Labyrinth. My sis is currently not working, supporting her and my niece. Gosh, I'm sorry. I mean, that's definitely some Saturn opposite Venus stuff right there. Saturn opposite Venus stuff right there. I'm so sorry, baby. Where'd Sarah? Oh, 93. 1993. You're exactly 10 years younger than me. Well, and a few months. My coworker literally said that to me today. Turn back, Sarah. Sarah, friend. Ludo loves Sarah. Hoggle is Hoggle's friend. I can't do Hoggle's voice so much. Oh, I was in love with Jennifer Connelly, though. I was in love with Jennifer Connelly. I mean, who wasn't? Who wasn't? She's still gorgeous. She's still absolutely gorgeous. Sarah, you didn't tell me what city you were born in. I need your date, time, and your city. I don't have a city for you, Sarah. I need date, time, city. I need date, time, city. I don't have a city for you, and I have to go, Sarah. I have to go. What's your city? City at night. City at night. City at night. Okay, Logan. Remember, I always need date, time, city. 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 Aquarius rising like me. Right? So Venus is the social nature here. And oh my gosh, like everything just in the 12th house. This is a rough one. And this is like a real stellium here. We have 4 planets conjunct in the same sign. Right? So this is a real wild stellium. Then we have Saturn in the 1st house, Venus in the 12th house. Gosh. Well, at least the 1st house ruler is Saturn, happy in the 1st house. Venus, on the other hand, rules the 4th and the 9th house. So I imagine, either dad wasn't around or dad was an alcoholic or maybe dad had mental health issues or something. Or maybe was neurodivergent. You were born on the boyfriend past. Oh my gosh, that's so wild. That's wild, Ms. Colston. So anyway, oh, look at that. We have Venus opposite the moon. Relationships are difficult for you, because you might be a people pleaser. You might get sucked into situations where, it's like you get paranoid when you fall in love. On the one hand, You fall in love. You get very excited about a relationship. You have a Cancer moon. You want to share your love and emotion with people. Unfortunately, your sense of security is at odds with how you relate to people, right? Venus is our social nature, how we relate. Venus is in Capricorn, right? When Venus is in Capricorn like this, it's hard to be mushy, right? There's a sense of not being able to relax around people that you care about and love, because we start having these intrusive thoughts like, oh, they're going to find someone prettier. They're going to find someone better. They're going to find someone smarter, who's a better astrologer. I have Venus square the moon, right? Venus opposite the moon is similar, but it's more persistent. You might find that it's hard to leave romantic situations because you're too scared. But the only way that relationships ever get fulfilling is by learning to walk away or be willing to walk away. And why is that? Because when you're too scared to walk away, people treat you like garbage, or at least they can. And you have a natural people-pleasing nature. And you want to be mushy with people, don't you? You want to have those romantic connections. Now, with Venus, well, hold on, what'd you say? Trying to deal with that. I am so mushy once I'm in, but it's been hard. Yeah. I think of Venus in Capricorn as like a Tootsie Pop. It's got this hard shell on the outside, although it's not too sweet and candy-like. And then this ooey gooey sweet inner nature, right? But you have to wade through all that chunky hard shit to get to that gooey gooiness, that gooey chocolateness. I hate Tootsie Pops, but, for people who understand the reference. So anyway, and see Venus in Capricorn. Capricorn's another Saturn-ruled sign, right? So think about Venus going cold and dry in there, right? She's a bit more socially awkward. It's hard for her to connect. I mean, she's still okay. But her sense of aesthetic is more practical, right? Things that function are more beautiful to a Capricorn Venus oftentimes. Like rather than having an ornate bathroom setup, they prefer to have a nice functional faucet, a nice functional faucet or whatever. So anyway, I wonder if you have a good singing voice too. But anyway, partnerships, relationships will be difficult too. And you might repeat the same patterns as you did with your father, because you would probably tend to go for partners who were fixer-uppers, right? The 12th house is self-undoing, right? The painful things of the mind. So we see people who are addicts, have mental health issues, have neurodivergence, who go to prison, or who just abandon us, or who lie and cheat and deceive us, you see? So you got to be very judicious about the kind of partners that you pick, because ideally you want someone who can retreat into your fantasy world with you. You want someone who can, who can live in this idyllic Romeo and Juliet scenario with you, but you still have to take care of your shit. You still have to take care of your stuff. Now Saturn being in the first house also contributes to being a people pleaser. And how is that? Because we look for our value through other people, and you have to stop that. And what we have to do is learn to find our value through our own sense of accomplishment, through what we've done and by doing things. And if you don't have a sense of confidence or accomplishment, then that means you have to do shit. It means you have to accomplish things. It means you have to have goals and set yourself to them and follow through, right? Because that's where confidence comes from. Yeah? Otherwise, it's not real. You have Mars conjunct the sun like I do, but in the 12th. So you have to watch out for your own addiction issues and stuff like that too. You have to really watch out for falling down these self-destructive behavioral patterns, right? And that you may be attracted to in other people. And it could be just repeating your father stuff in relationships, It's okay to call your partners daddy, but not when they, actually treat you like a child. Or like an abused, you know what I mean? Thinking they can gaslight you, run off, and just come back and love bomb you. That's sort of bullshit. You know what I mean? I'm sure you've experienced that. So, what else are we missing here? Did Bexy ever come back? I don't think she did. I think she had to go. So anyway, I have to go to the dentist in just a minute. You do have daddy issues. Really quickly, though, because you're Aquarius rising, Jupiter and Mars are in your 5th house, right? Venus is in your 8th, and Saturn is in your 2nd, right? This is a time when you're learning to clean up and organize your financial resources. There could be a lot of fear around it, like getting very anxious about your financial resources and all that. But you're learning to put things in order. Like if you hadn't been tracking your expenses and income before, now you really do need to. Mars conjunct Jupiter in the 5th house. If you have children, they're probably a pain in the ass right now. If you don't have children, you might be thinking about having children, or that you might get pregnant over the next year. So I'm not trying to put that evil on you, because, I mean, I sure wouldn't want to be having kids. I mean, I already have kids, so, or I have a child, which is plenty. But Jupiter going through the 5th house does sometimes correlate with getting pregnant or having a child. My daughter was born while Jupiter went through my 5th house. Quite interesting. The other thing, though, is you might be quite horny and you need to get fucked. So that's a thing. Now, if you don't have any partners, or if that's a weird thing with you, you see Mars in the 5th house also indicates a lot of masturbation. So I don't know if I'm able to say that on here, but yeah, it's something we see. Meanwhile, Venus is going through your 8th house, which is all about forgiving people and forgiveness. So there's something that you're literally having to go back and reconcile. Maybe you were really shitty to someone. You know, maybe you yelled at someone. I know I yelled at someone a while ago, and I had to apologize. So you have physical therapy at 3. Yeah, I have physical therapy tomorrow, right? Do I have it tomorrow? I have physical therapy twice a week now. Oops. I had physical therapy yesterday. And I have to get my crown put on right now. Or my temporary crown. So anyway. Thank you for everyone who came. Please like the stream. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And share my shit with your friends. Please. Share my shit with your friends. Like, they need to know.